Hello, our world. Welcome back to another episode of RWorld Talk. We've got a really exciting episode for you all today. We are here with Dr. Jen Welter. She is a trailblazer in the world of professional football, celebrated as the first female coach in the NFL. In 2015, she made history by serving as a linebackers coach for the Arizona Cardinals. And beyond her coaching achievements, she is a successful entrepreneur, motivational speaker, and advocate for empowering women in sports. So listen up and welcome Dr. Jen.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Straight off the flight.
Awesome to have you. Yes, straight off a flight. You were the first woman to coach in the NFL. Obviously, an incredible accomplishment with an industry that is dominated by men. Can you share what that moment meant for you and the lessons that you learned about breaking barriers?
Oh my gosh. Well, we could be here all day. So y'all just lean in, grab some snacks. For me, I think the biggest thing that I can put into perspective is it was never anything I imagined I could do because there wasn't a woman I could look at and say, I want to be her. I never set out to coach football. Um, I I didn't see a place in a space where there was really that intersection between the men's world and the women's world, right? Like,
Okay.
we as women playing tackle football, we're kind of on an island, right? We
Right.
were the barrier breakers. We were the ones defying this stereotype of football being the final frontier for women in sports. And so we kind of took that as a challenge. And I got into men's professional football by playing first.
Interesting.
And, you know, throughout my women's career, I'm 5'2", a buck 30, right? Like I was not the one who's like, I'm going to play against guys one day. Like, in fact, it was kind of a joke. They'd be like, Jen, you played for so long. You've done all this. Are you trying to like go play in the NFL? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm 5'2". I would never do that. I am not crazy. And then you do the things that are so crazy you couldn't even dream that big. And so, I didn't set out to do it. I did it despite the fact that things like that weren't set out for it. And I think as we look at what's so important is that, when you have a first, it gives everyone who sees it permission to think differently, right? Like
Love that.
it's little girls could say, "Oh my gosh, I want to do what she did," or "She looks like me," or "I love football too." And little boys say, "Oh my gosh, you mean a coach could look in more than different ways?" And so when when I talk about that to people, I'm like, it's one thing to have a dream and a drive, and most of us have been taught this goal setting roadmap, right? Start with the big and then work backwards and do these incremental things to get there. But if you don't have permission to dream that big part, how do you get there? And it's such a different road when the road has yet to be defined, and you're the one who's kind of um, ahead of the tide and moving those goalposts for other people to then be able to set goals for.
You're the ultimate trailblazer.
Well, trailblazer means more to me than some people. People say it like you did. They're like, "Oh my gosh, trailblazer," and I immediately get almost this visceral like, and people are like, "What is that?" I'm like, "Okay, I want you to think about what trailblazer actually means. There is a freaking jungle and there is no trail. You have a belief that somewhere at the end of the road that there's going to be daylight or there's whatever it was that you thought you were getting to, but you don't know it for sure.
Right.
So picture a very deep, dark jungle. And you're going under this, you're going through this, you're around this, you're up that. Oh, that doesn't work. That trailblazer. Oh,
Right.
that branch didn't feel so good, and then you cut it down, and the next person gets to skippity doo-dah through, oh, what a lovely trail, right?
Oh,
So
interesting.
the person at the front there is no trail. And so it is ugly. It is not pretty. It's not polished. It's not perfect.
Right.
And a lot of the times it's really painful. The next person can then do that goal setting and work backwards. But so I laugh because trailblazer, people glorify it. And I go, oh, if you only knew what that word meant, right?
How many cuts and bruises you got from blazing that trail?
Yes, the scars to prove it.
Wow. So while you were a coach for the Arizona Cardinals, this is funny because we have one of our staff members here that writes these questions, and when I read through this, I'm like, it says, "Did you face any adversity?" I'm like, I already know the answer to that question, but let's see what you have to say in regards to that. Did you face any adversity while you were a coach?
Well, I think the it, adversity is inherent in doing something different because I want you to think of the status quo, okay? Being someone on vacation, chilling in a hammock, drinking a Mai Tai by the ocean. Okay. When you are the first or you are the disruptor, you're the one who rocked the hammock, spilled the Mai Tai, and knocked the status quo right on their butt, right? Like
Right.
you are that person who took everything that was set and was comfortable, right? It's comfort zone for a reason, and you spun the hammock. So that means no one's neutral when it comes to you, right? On one in one argument, from the female standpoint, it was like, she is the feminist in football that the world needs, and like some of that stuff. And I'm like, I'm just coaching football, right? Like, you're not like, I'm not going to be like, yeah, feminism. I'm like, huh, have you seen this playbook, guys? We got,
Right.
so
You were
you've got
focused on the task at hand.
that's right. But you've got the narrative of, this feminist trailblazer, blah, blah, blah. And then you've got the death of the patriarchy on the other hand. So no one is neutral, right? So you're the best of the best or the worst of the worst, depending on who you ask. I think where people assumed that there would be adversity was with players. Players weren't tough for me. The guys were actually some of my biggest advocates, and
That's
you
good
know,
to hear.
yeah, I was just at Super Bowl, and both Kevin Minter and Patrick Peterson were with me in Arizona, and when we saw each other, it was like, everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, they really like you," right? Like I saw Kevin, and he was my linebacker captain, and we were talking, and all the people around were like, they're like, "Oh, Kev, like." you you like her? And he's like, no, I love her. Like, and those guys always were the ones who would say like, she made me better as a person and as a player, right? I have a PhD in psychology, so I was probably more um more used to that role than even just coaching football, and I had been a player. So
Sure.
the players were relatively easy. I will also give you a cheat code for anybody in business who's thinking about doing something different, that I didn't find out until I wrote my book later, and talked to Bruce Arians about part of the reason why it went so smoothly, I believe, with the players is that when BA had made the decision that he maybe wanted to make this change and be the coach to hire the first, female to his staff. He didn't go top end first. So he didn't go to the big bosses and say, this should be a DEI thing or whatever you want to say. He went to the locker room. He went to those players first and said, I think we have the opportunity to do something really special. And when they were behind it, that's when he then went up the flagpole. But he told me later, he was like, if the guys were dead set against it, doesn't matter how good you were, they weren't going to listen.
Right.
And so,
That'll kill a team real quick.
yep. And so I think that was a really smart thing that BA did, really setting us up for success. And part of why the guys were so proud of being a part of history. And they would say it all the time, right? They'd be like, Coach, I want to be in your movie one day. Like, well, you better give your boy a cameo, right?
Yeah.
And I think they were even more aware of it. I would say the places where you find the most adversity is that microscope that you're under.
Hmm.
Because as the first, you don't want to also be the last.
Right.
You don't want to give them a reason why the door is closed tighter than it may have been before. Um, and the narratives were tough, right? I think social media, I think a lot of that stuff is really tough. And then, you know, I used to get death threats. I had stalkers. I all of those things just for being a woman in football. And so I think you've seen that smooth out some now for the women who are here, which makes me really happy. But at that time, that was the toughest thing. And I'm so thankful though for everybody that was in Arizona because those players and those coaches and the ownership really had my back in a time when the world was not necessarily ready for that change.
Wow. So my next question, follow-up question was actually, did you have any criticism? Obviously, there was some criticism. So how did you overcome that? I mean, obviously, you had just said that you've got death threats. I mean, people were, you've got some people who are not being the nicest, knowing that you're there in that position. So how do you overcome that internally just to keep yourself pushing forward?
I think it was easy on a day-to-day basis because you see it in the reactions from the players, right? And it's those relationships, and that's what you focus on in the locker room. So when they say don't read the comments, I really tried to not read the comments. And thankfully I was busy enough that you just don't have the bandwidth. I think when it gets harder is maybe even just like the battle of our own mind. Like I remember thinking of, running out on the field for my first game and like, you have this moment of like, yeah. And then I pictured myself like face planting and Cheerios, right?
Yeah.
So I tried to use like just a lot of humor and just be real honest with the situations and lean into what I could control. And that was those, the relationships with those players every day and just showing up to do my damnedest and to realize that, you know, anyone going into a new situation, doesn't matter what that situation is, has a lot to learn.
Right.
And so you can be great at what you're great at and also be great at being a student. So the best coaches have to be great students, and that means, letting the situation coach you, letting the players coach you, letting the coaches coach you, and even even learning lessons like, you think you're tough, right? Like I think I'm pretty tough. I played, I was one of the best in the world. Um, but, like, going from the stadium to the hotel, one, it's, like, 130 some odd degrees outside in Arizona, so
Yeah.
those visions of you, like, that you're gonna just walk and get some exercise, probably not gonna happen, but you may think it on day 1, but that's not happen deep in camp. But the other one was so we used to take these, like, golf carts, like, from the stadium to the hotel, and the coaches were always like, "She does not ride by herself. Like, she should not be by herself." And I was like, "Whatever." And, I didn't really pay attention and I appreciated it, but I don't think I understood why, right? I think sometimes we need the why, right? And so I got left and I was the last person out. I think I had to do an interview or something. And so I just got in the golf cart and went to like go. Well, it was like the fans smelled blood in the water, like the girl's there by herself, and they overtook the golf cart.
No way.
They overtook the golf cart, and I mean, like, I couldn't go anywhere. You can't drive because 'cause you're gonna hit somebody. Like, golf carts don't go fast enough that you could really run away.
Right, right.
So they just overtook the golf cart, and I remember I was just like, I mean, I'm used to, like, relative anonymity, and then all of a sudden, I'm, like, mobbed, like, "Coach, we love you. Coach, we want your autographs." I'm like, "Oh my god." And then I'm so late because I can't get out of there, right? And so I walk into a coaches meeting, and I mean, I am late. Like, in football, when we say when you're on time, you're late.
Mhm.
So I'm late.
We say
I'm
the
probably
same thing in real estate.
oh, yeah. Like, so I'm late, 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 and I get nervous. My mentor, Larry Fuda, said, "Girl, where have you been?" And I didn't even have, like, words, and I just looked at him, and I was like, "They they took over the golf cart." And he was like, "What?" And I was like, Yeah, the fans did." Yeah, and he was like, "Yo, we said we weren't gonna leave her by herself." And so it was like You don't know what you don't know, and
Right.
I never would've if you woulda asked me, like, what things could you think possibly would go wrong, if you woulda said, like, "Do you think that the fans could possibly overtake the golf cart and keep you there trapped?" Like,
Never.
no, it was like, it was like a riot, except they're rioting around me, and they don't wanna hurt me, they just want my autograph, but it's so weird.
Well,
Um, so you just have all of those kinds of things, but the adversity comes not where I think most people think it comes from, but some of those weird places like the bend that you couldn't have seen around.
wow. It's a good thing you didn't read the comments because I'm sure that you've watched some of those videos now where they have like Josh Allen sit down and read mean Twitter tweets and things like that. It's comical the way that when they're reading it themselves, but I can't imagine that that's comical when every time you go and open up social media, you've got things popping up where people are completely trashing
So
you.
you want the meanest comment that you could possibly ever, 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 ever,
Okay.
ever do. So it's when I was playing on the men's professional team,
Okay.
and somebody commented, "She's gonna get hit and die and or get pregnant." And I
Wow.
was by myself in my house, and it was so absurd, I just started cackling by myself. Like, I'm just alone in my house, just, like, laughing so hard I have tears. And then I realized, I'm like, everybody's waiting for that worst comment because they would ask in interviews and things like that, and I just decided, I was like, "I'm gonna use this." And so we're in interviews, the had to do, like, the whole car wash and, blah, 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 and everybody's waiting for that, like, terrible moment, "Can I get you to cry?" And I'm like, "Listen, guys, I gotta tell you, I've read some pretty tough comments, but you wanna hear the worst?" And I would tell them, and they're like, "Oh." And I'm like, "Yeah, listen, I gotta tell you, I was one of the best linebackers in the world, right? Team USA, one of the leaders in tackles, like, I hit people really hard, but I did not know it was possible to hit somebody so hard that you could cause immaculate conception and death, right? And where do you go from there? You can't go
Right.
anywhere
They can't
from
troll you from
immaculate
there.
conception and
Yeah.
death. Like, I think that's the worst that it could possibly
Yeah,
be.
you won.
Um, but it taught me a lot, right? Like, it taught me in dealing with that just to kinda lean into the ridiculous
Yeah.
because, I mean, in those situations, I've been in so many tough ones at this point, and I really realized that my sarcasm, thank you, dad, is a superpower, and so I would try and look at those awkward scenarios, which now I've been in way too many, and just always find kind of the funny.
Yeah.
And it's been certainly one of the things that I learned playing against the guys, and then, it served me well in coaching them as
Well, you're dropping all kinds of nuggets for us in ways that I'm sure that's listening right now is absorbing differently, but tons and tons of nuggets here. And yeah, that's I think that sometimes life can get out of hand, and to be able to laugh at yourself or laugh at whoever it is that's trying to taunt you and just go about your business is the ultimate diss right back at them. Like, I'm just gonna let this roll off my back. You are not affecting my day today.
Look, and I tell people all the time too, like, you know, I I laugh a lot, but there's also times when I would tell people, I'm like, there are so many times that I would have to cry and then reapply to face the world, right? Like, so I would cry my mascara down my face when no one was watching and then gather myself and then, reapply the makeup because I needed to face the world.
Right.
And um I didn't have the luxury of letting someone see me cry. And one of my teams, they knew the guys, and the players are so smart. Like, I know some people think, oh, just a football player. I'm like, oh, you're selling these guys so short because they knew me so well. And I had on one of the teams I coached for, I had a particular pair of sunglasses that was very, like, very big. Well, I had a couple, and you couldn't see anything, and they'd be like, "Uh-oh, uh-oh."
She got the sunglasses on.
Yep, yep, and it was a pretty toxic situation, and they knew. The guys knew. They'd be like, "You good?" And I'd be like, "Mm." They were like, "Do we need to kill somebody?" And I'm like, "Mhm." And just the offer was enough.
Yeah, yeah. So in 2023, you partnered with Mattel Toys, um, obviously Barbie, everybody knows Barbie, to help launch Barbie's Career of the Year Women in Sports Edition. I'm going to give you a little quote from Sports Illustrated for everybody who's listening. It is important to me to have the Coach Barbie because I didn't have that. There was no one I could look at and say, I'm going to do what she's doing. What a freaking memorable moment. I know we started off with that, but
Yeah.
to have Coach Barbie, that is absolutely insane to think of that you were able to effectuate that change to allow that all of those little girls who now have somebody to look up to like yourself.
Yeah, and you know what was so cool to work with Mattel on that is, and it came right out after the Barbie movie, and you talk about the unboxing, and I think that's such a great thing for each of us to think about is the boxes that we put ourselves in or that other people try and put us in. And I remember asking them, like, can I talk about the fact that I didn't necessarily see myself as a Barbie when I was a kid because, I was into all the sports and all of this, and she didn't look like me, and they
Right.
said, "Absolutely, yes." Right? And so for someone like me who knows that maybe I don't fit what the traditional mold is, to be able to partner with a brand like Barbie and not only show girls it's cool to be that it's okay to be different,
Right.
but to really say, "You know what? It's not only okay, but it's really freaking cool." To find that place in the space in the world where you are inherently different and that is inherently what makes you special. Um, that to me is the stuff that gets me up in the morning. For that little girl that felt like she was wrong because she couldn't see herself anybody, like, I want her to say, "You know what? I could do that too." Right? And Barbie really leaned into that message as well, and what a cool thing for them to do, and, they've continued to show up for me. We were just in New Orleans, and I had 3 events on around Super Bowl celebrating, honoring the past of women in football, um, celebrating fandom, and, ensuring the next generation, right? Like,
Wow. Powerful
and
stuff.
yeah, and Barbie sent Barbies to the girls in New
Amazing.
Orleans, and, they got to, play some football and leave with a Barbie, and
That's so cool.
it was kinda like, "Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's
Awesome.
great, you can."
So confidence obviously key in business. We just had Women Rock the Biz. We had the Girls with Grit here. We talked a lot about confidence on that podcast episode. What advice do you have for realtors that are trying to build really unshakable confidence in their lives, in their businesses, in their careers, especially when they're facing the challenges that they're facing in their industry?
Well, the first thing that I would say is first be a human. No one is unshakable. We are like, no matter how freaking great you are, there are gonna be moments that give you the right? Like,
Right.
we've all
The
been there,
punch in the
like,
gut
the
in life.
punch
Yep.
to the gut that just like, "Oh, I thought I was past this," or "Didn't I already learn this lesson?" or "What made me think that I could do that?" It's human to have that. But what is it trying to tell you in that moment? Right? Like, I think confidence comes through, like, honesty with yourself
Right.
and really in your humanity, right? Like, because people always ask me that, and I'm like, "I'm not confident in every scenario." But I'm coachable in every scenario, right? Like, and if something doesn't hit right, like it may knock me back a step.
And that's okay.
That's okay. When we try and tell people that they should be 100% productive 100% of the days, or they should be 100% confident 100% of the days, that's where people get like, like fake it till you make it or imposter syndrome. I'm telling you right now, the imposters are the ones who tell you that they don't ever have a bad day, that they don't ever make a bad play, that they don't ever have that moment of just like, am I over my skis? That is BS, and I
Right.
will call it that. The truth is that you say, "Okay, you know what? Maybe that wasn't the right client for me." Sometimes you gotta fire your clients,
Yep.
right? Like, We have all been there. You could be the best realtor in the world, and that person's just not going to be okay.
Yeah.
Is that a you problem or is that them problem? Right? You're not going to fit with everybody or in every scenario. Okay, that's okay too. Right? So I think confidence comes from really getting to know yourself, really starting to be honest with yourself, really leaning into who you are authentically. Right? And then when you walk in those shoes, the ones that fit you,
Yep.
you're going to be way more confident, right? People who bring me into a scenario, they know what they're getting, right? Like I've been the same person for a very long time, right? I'm very outspoken. I'm very this, I'm very that. Like, you know exactly what you're getting. If you want a wallflower, probably don't choose me. If you want somebody to just, check the box, be there, look pretty, and, maybe be seen and not heard, I am not her, right? So that confidence comes through actually really getting in line with where you can be productive, what your special sauce is, the team that you need to rock with, the kind of clients that you're going to work best with. Like, where are you in your zone?
Right.
And then, oh, by the way, yes, there are things that you can do. One of them is a soundtrack. Okay. Like, I mean, music can take you places. Our mind can only really hold one thought at a time.
Right.
So if there's that song that just gets you like I'm killing it.
Yep.
Okay. Put that playlist together. Okay. So you walk it before you go in the room. You also want to have that body confidence posture. Because that is something that psychologically we see used in the reverse a lot, right? Like think about a prisoner in chains. Do you know why they do that?
Put them in chains
Yeah.
to knock them down.
Yeah. It's physically this posture.
Right.
Right here breaks your confidence. You can't put your head high. Your shoulders are rounded forward. If you sit in that broken posture for a few minutes, you're going to start to feel broken because our mind and our body are innately connected. I have heard debates on fake it till you make it. I don't think you're faking it. I think you can cheat code it, right? Like give yourself, like if you do this, right? Your body interprets it the same way that you interpret it looking at me. So my mind will feel what you see. If I walk in like this and I'm like, hey, I'm going to teach you about confidence.
Yeah, I'm not buying that ticket.
You're not buying it, right? Like, but then you come and you want to actually like confidence, they say like goes like back to, biology. Even like this, like if I do this, it's a very confident posture because my jugular is exposed.
Interesting.
Right. So you'll see that as wow, confident and attention seek, like, and somebody who's doing this. And so like even your body language will then come back to not only like convey that to you, but also to me. So the posture cheat code is a really important one. And then one that I love, which is kind of a hybrid of some people's philosophy, is take not only that soundtrack, but take images of you as your best self. What was that best day? Right? Like, what was that favorite hairstyle, that favorite outfit, that whatever it is, take that. And if you're a realtor, take your biggest sale you've ever made, right? Have some pictures around that. Cue yourself, put it to music. Okay. So I want you to take those images that make you feel best,
Right.
put it to music. So you have basically a highlight reel that you watch it a few times. And then when you hear that song, those images will come into your mind. Right.
So you get yourself all psyched up like Rocky.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're literally hacking your own mindset. Right. Because that song makes you feel it. And we've all had that day. Right. Like, I mean, I want you to picture like a really annoying day that you were having. You're very mad. And you walk into like a store or a restaurant and there's that song on.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, no, I'm not listening. I'm mad. And then you kind of like, but
Start to loosen up a little bit.
right. And you're no. Don't do it, song. I'm mad. I'm not going to let you win.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the song, it's winning. Right. So that music can take you places. But now let's be a little bit more intentional and let's take the song mindset that you want to get into and let's put visual cues with it so that if you need to pull up those visual cues on demand, they'll be linked with the song that you're hearing. So
Absolutely.
then you're not leaving it to chance.
Right.
I can still picture some of the highlight reels from my football career along with our warm-up songs. Whenever it comes on, I'm like, "Ooh, yeah. Oh, yeah, she about to get it." Right? Like, and so the more we can make that tangible and real, the harder it is to fight. And remember, again, your mind only wants to hold on to one thing at a time. And so a lot of us, when we try and get away, we do what? We close our eyes. Okay. So if you've conditioned yourself to be able to, on demand, pull some of those images for strength, where do you get your courage from? Like, did your mom or your dad always inspire you? Are your kids the reason why you're showing up or why you're getting up early? Put those images in there so that you're literally supporting yourself to be able to bank on what you need when you need it.
Wow, amazing stuff, guys. One piece of advice I would give you is don't be cranking those tunes right in the driveway because the homeowner might be sitting in their living room watching you in your car get ready to come in for that listing appointment. And if you're just jamming out, you're going to look a little bit nuts. So just like maybe do it around the block, get pumped up, then pull into the driveway.
Or put it in your headset.
Oh, there you go.
Put it in your
Like air
headset.
drone,
Yeah.
it's like, waiting,
Yeah.
doing the listing appointment. Okay, so you also founded Gridiron Girls to empower young female athletes. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that program and how realtors can maybe take a similar approach in their businesses to
Um,
give back to their communities?
so for me, I think I find a lot of juice in youth, right? Like I think I remember when I felt like the world was tough and I wasn't sure, politically, like being this first female and felt like weight and, it was very serious. And yet I could find the kid in me with every little kid, right? And so I literally heard in my head one day, like, I need to be the woman I needed and didn't have. With Gridiron Girls was the first national movement for girls in flag football. We've done 66 girls camps across the country, but I knew I could be the woman that they needed every time I showed up on that field. And they give me the courage to then go into bigger fights because it's not fighting for myself, it's fighting for them.
You're fighting for them now.
Yeah. And, I think all of us could get fearful when it comes to just us, right? If it was just for me, then would you do it? But when you're doing it for the good of this next generation or, some of these girls that the world is going to have more opportunity for them, that's where I get pretty fierce.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how many of
You
you
got
guys.
those big bright eyes watching you to see what your next move is.
That's right. And I don't know how many of you watched the Super Bowl. I'm assuming some of you did, but the commercial in there about, with the girl and the bullies.
Yeah.
That girl, her name's Kilolo, and I've mentored her for, gosh, since before COVID. And, she calls me auntie. Like, I think for me, that's where bravery comes from. That's where hustle comes from. That's where all that comes from is, finding a piece of your why. So whether it be football for me or something else, like, what gives you, a little sparkle and where can you find that? And I know that with all of my players, I tell them the same thing is like, you know, everyone should give back. Everyone.
Absolutely.
Right? But don't give back in the places that don't give you something in return. One of my players, and I love him to this day, he literally was like, Coach, I love what you do with, the girls and it's awesome. And he goes, but I want to do something, but I can't do that. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he was like, just I'm kind of shy. Like, it's not kids for me. And I was like, so do dogs.
Right.
And he was like,
Do something that's going to make you happy.
right. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, you love animals.
Be your authentic self.
Right. And he was like, I do. And I was like, so do something with an animal rescue. And he was like,
Yeah.
right. And it brought out that little kid self,
Right.
which I think
Which everybody's got inside them.
everyone's got inside. And sometimes we just need help on tapping into that superpower. So wherever that is, and whatever, or one of my friends who did a lot in real estate, he actually, had a a biz or a part of his where they could help single moms get into homes because he was raised by a single mom. So
Wow.
find those places with joy that you can reinvest in the community and don't second guess it,
Okay.
right? If you have an opportunity to, whether it is go to a youth sports camp or one of those, like, I think we get so focused on dollars that sometimes we forget what makes sense.
Right.
And you're I always end up meeting people that I'm gonna do great business with when I do great things in the world. And in turn, those are people I wanna do business with.
Right. Yeah. Just do it. Don't overthink it. Just do it. Get it done.
Yep.
Excuse me. Finally, if you could just give us one piece of advice. I'm going to let you get back to your life here. I know that you've got a really fun afternoon planned out there, not being stuck in here with me. But if you could give us just one piece of advice to aspiring women leaders, whether it's sports, real estate, any other field, what would it be?
It would be authentically you. I think so often as women, we've been taught, and I know I was, that there was one style of leadership. Um, and, I remember reading every business book when I was at Boston College, and all of them talked about like this hierarchy of leadership, pyramid and the guy on top. And there was very little talk of empathy or, really loving your people. And I remember reading those books and thinking, well, maybe I'm not a leader then.
Right. How come
'Cause
nobody's talking about your tribe?
right. And for me, empathy is one of the greatest gifts that like we have the ability to have. And so I think the more you can really find where your superpowers are and work with the people who appreciate you for your superpowers,
Right.
the more successful you're going to be. I know that there was nobody I could look at when I went to the Cardinals and say I'm going to coach like him. Would have been pretty authentic. They would have been toe to toe, chest to chest, eye to eye, and I would have been toe to toe, chest to belly button, right? Like, it's just not the same,
Right.
right? I know for me, and this is a great example that leans into that. I remember how many people would say, well, how did you command respect when you went to the Cardinals? And I would go, ooh, command. Don't command respect. You earn it, right? I could not have yelled loud enough for any of those guys to have to listen,
Right.
but any one of them could lean into a whisper. And just saying that is, I'm 5'2". They could lean into me, and that's a choice, but I couldn't jump loud enough for them to have to pay attention to me, right?
Sure.
Picture that little chihuahua, right? It's just not the same.
Right.
So take things from people that you admire and build them into how you do it. Do you love the way somebody makes eye contact or how they're very present or that like I'm known for writing a mean note, right? Some of those things. Take those things and see if they authentically fit with you, but your style has to be your own
Right.
because if you're always trying to be somebody else, again, we'll go back to that inauthenticity. And that's where, again, that imposter syndrome comes in. And you're always going to struggle with your confidence because if you have to be someone else to be in the conversation, are you really in the right rooms? Are you really in the right conversation? I think when you lean into being yourself and really the best version of yourself, that doesn't mean just, mail it in and they should just love me because no, because everybody has a choice. But lean into bringing your best version of yourself to the equation and then really see how that lands and always strive to be better. Right? Like I am in competition with myself, but it is to be myself, not to be someone else.
Right. To be the best version of you. So that way you can put that out to the world.
Absolutely.
Beautiful stuff. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah.
Guys, like I said on last week's episode, if you missed Women Rock the Biz, make sure that you get your tickets early next year. I think that you've all heard the common theme that we've had, whether it be Tammy Saltzman from a few weeks ago, Girls with Grit that we just had last week, Dr. Jen right now talking about be your authentic self, and you are going to see some doors open up for you. And regardless what sort of field, industry, sports, just anything in life. And Dr. Jen, thank you so much for being with us.
You're so welcome.
Incredible. Great advice for everybody. And we will see you all right back here next Friday, 8 a.m. on RWorld Talk.